all the van. And then we have our vehicles. So basically we have like an homologated experience with all the vans needs to have the same value proposition, no, with the same amenities, same branding, and all these vans are from partners that they put their own vans in our platform, and so that we can operate them, no. And lastly, our routes. So all the routes that we create, and we have like over 50 routes, are based with customer needs. So we kind of get together data internally and externally to find the best ways possible. And the routes are normally A point to B point. So we need to make sure that demands from both corporate sides and residential, no, we can have a really good fit, no. On the demand side, we have both B2C and B2B. The B2C, so basically people just download the app and start using with one of the routes that most fits their intentions. And then the B2B, you can, as a company, subsidize the tickets of your employee, or also have a fixed routes or private routes for your own company, no? Just like thinking about COVID, this was like in Mexico, for the ones that are not from here, it impacted us like 2 months ago, like on the 15th of March. So on the first 2 weeks was really fast, the impact that we had. So for you to understand, the mobility in Mexico City dropped up to like 82%. So 18% of the baseline of from before. There are some public transportation verticals that went up to 95% of a drop. So it was huge and was really fast. No, there was like no much time to adapt. And in here for us was a huge challenge. Also, we started doing home offices as all the companies know. In here, and we're starting to adapt. I think I'm gonna furthermore, like in the next question, to give opportunity for the other panels also to present their company.
Thank you, Joao, very much. And well, for anyone who has visited Mexico City, now the urban vans are a pretty common sight. So thank you, Joao, for the presentation. Now I would like to have Bruno on board. Bruno from Mi Águila from Colombia.
Hola a todos. Thank you so much for the invitation. Let me see if I can put my camera on. There you go. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. For us at Mi Águila, we have done several things related to COVID-19. We have faced a tremendous, as many entrepreneurs around the world, tremendous challenges since COVID-19 hit our region. Thanks to partners like angel investors and other friends in the ecosystem, we anticipated to what was happening in Colombia probably 2 weeks before it actually hit in Colombia. So we did a couple of things. Number one, we are delivering in B2B transportation in Colombia, mainly helping mobilize the workforce in Colombia. So our transportation was heavily, the business of transportation was heavily affected, roughly between 7 to 80%. It's no surprise. It's consistent in most companies around the world. So what we did from the start was to use our existing technology relationship with companies. And one of the categories that we saw a significant growth in the world was the delivery of groceries. So what we did was using our existing infrastructure of cars, vans, our presence nationwide. We created a marketplace and created a logistic platform to be able to ship groceries to Colombians in more than 9 cities. In less than 30 days, we were able to deliver more than 4 million products to Colombians in 9 cities. That has been our most significant change during COVID-19. One decision that we took early was to make sure that that all our employees were healthy and nobody was exposed to COVID-19. So we implemented very strict protocols for our drivers, complying with Colombian laws. We communicated these protocols with our partners and companies, and we launched our logistic business that is now representing, as we speak, a significant percentage of our business at this point. It's hard to tell what the future holds in terms of mobility. I know it's going to be exciting, but for the weeks and months to come, it's uncertain times. But I think as entrepreneurs, we have the responsibility and the job to adapt to circumstances like we're facing today. And we're excited. We're excited how we can contribute to Colombia and to the region as a whole in terms of mobility and logistics.
Thank you, Bruno. And glad to see that those águilas are flying high. And finally, to round up Latin America, I would like to ask Alejandro from Viapool, operating in Argentina and Chile, to tell us a little bit more about the company.
Well, hello everyone. Thanks Camilo and Hernan for the invitation and the rest of the guys. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Viapool. Viapool has been around for nearly 10 years. That's why the gray hair here. We started mainly as a ride-hailing operator, and in the last 2 or 3 years, we got more involved into the shuttle services. We operate 100% B2B, and we have the intentions of expanding to Chile, and we've been involved with Chile pretty much for the last year very strongly. Argentina, it's quite complicated. We started our quarantine nearly 2 months ago, probably one of the first countries in Latin America, on March 19th. And within the first 2 weeks, we had probably 80% of the activities and the economy was totally shut down. Just recently, probably in the last week or so, part of the country is starting to go back to business with certain restrictions, etc. But in general, we're pretty much at home. And especially Buenos Aires metropolitan area. Buenos Aires is like a 60 million people city. So we're all at home so far. It's where the disease probably has spread a little bit more. We're still probably below any projection. So we're happy with the sanitation plan that we have put in place. The one that is totally uncertain right now is the economy. The government has been really present to try to sustain people and companies in certain ways, more effective in certain areas and less effective in other ones. But of course, as Argentines, our main concern is inflation. And with this monetary emission, we don't know where we're going. But the situation probably for the next couple of weeks, if we continue to have not as many cases as we anticipated at the beginning, we might have some good news of starting to go back as the rest of the country, mainly as someone that lives in Buenos Aires, who is pretty much, in order to give you an idea of what's going on, if you have one of these main activities essential to life that you have to continue working, you have to apply for a specific authorization to the government, and you get this authorization in an app, and that's the only way that you can move around the city without getting fines or even bigger concerns. So hopefully, sanitation-wise, we're really good, but hoping for the economy to go back to some sort of activity in order to start to catch up.
Thank you, Alejandro. Certainly, this is survival of the fittest times, and entrepreneurs are always resilient and in constant change. So now I would like to give the word to Ali from Bolt Lines in Turkey.
Hi, everyone. So this is Ali from Bolt Lines in Turkey. Good to see some familiar faces. I almost know everyone in the call except for Alejandro and Amit. These are the new people in the call. So yes, for Bolt Lines, we are purely B2B. We started 2 years ago. We started on April 2018. We're serving B2B customers, and we have a specific focus on the commute market. So we're focused on the commute segment of the B2B. Bolt Lines has a special way of handling this segment, this market. So we have a monthly subscription plan. We like to call ourselves the Netflix of commute, basically. So companies used to rent buses before. With us, it's a single network, so there's no dedicated buses. It's a single network open to all of its participants. And companies buy from us a monthly subscription per employee. And each employee using our app, there's a boarding pass in our app that gives its users access to the whole network, unlimited, no extra charges. You can use different directions, different destinations. If you miss your bus, you can take the next bus as long as it's within the commute hours. As of pre-COVID, we were operating roughly around 300 buses. So just for perspective, we started with three buses back in April 2018. March, April, were supposed to hit 350 lines. So we were in our very rapid ramp-up phase when this hit. For perspective, it hit us in Turkey quite hard. We are one of the top, I think we're the 9th most infected country in the world, if I'm not mistaken about the numbers. We've been very aggressive on testing. We've been testing a lot. We have 141,000 cases. So basically the country went into a partial lockdown. We didn't have the full lockdown that we've seen in other markets. We had a partial lockdown happening over weekends, but companies in general switched completely to work from home. And as a B2B commute market, basically you can imagine that we've been impacted severely by this. So our operations were down by 88%. So if I heard correctly, Urban dropped by 82, we dropped by 88. The similarities are quite clear. The COVID outbreak started in Turkey on the week of March 11th. So again, similar timelines, similar outbreak timelines. And basically what we were able to do, or what we moved very quickly on, was first of all, communicating with the stakeholders, whether it's our customers or our drivers, or most importantly, our employees, managing the crisis through a crisis management team. But the most important thing we did was to protect the drivers during this period. So to keep them on a minimum earning scheme instead of completely going down to zero. And our customers were very supportive during that period. And that's the beauty about the subscription model, that customers continued to pay the base fee of the subscription model, which helped drivers kind of keep afloat during this period.
Thank you, Ali. Very insightful and a very interesting model that we have followed for a while. And finally, turning over to Amit, certainly with the size and scale of India, what Shuttle has done is nothing short of impressive. So, very happy to have you here, Amit. Even if it might be a little bit later for you, very excited to hear from the Shuttle story.
Thank you, Anand, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be talking in front of you. So, in short, we are essentially similar to most of these companies that we have been talking about. We're running vans or buses to help people get to their workplaces. We're largely consumer focused. We tried our hands at enterprise. We have not done too well there. It's hard to get money out of enterprises in India. And on the consumer side, pre-COVID, we were operating more than 2,000 buses, doing about 120,000 daily rides. We have been in business for 5 years, but currently we are not in business. We talked about 82%, 88%. We are down by 100%. We have completely suspended operations. In India, the COVID, the numbers are not as big, but that could possibly be because we are not testing as much. But we are currently in what we call season 3 of our lockdown, and from Monday we'll be entering season 4. The first 2 lockdowns were very strict, almost no movement of people allowed unless you are into essential services. Even goods were harder to come by. But the third one has been more relaxed. Now we are moving in that direction of having containment zones, red zones, orange zones, and green zones. And we'll find out what it would be like in lockdown 4. So that's kind of long and short of it. In terms of how we are trying to kind of look at this situation, honestly, after 5 years of compounding mistakes, it's a good opportunity to just pause and look back and try to figure out what we have been doing wrong all this while. And while obviously these are depressing times, these are testing times, and mobility is adversely impacted, so are we. but we are beginning to feel that maybe there is a possibility that 3 years down the line, we can look back and say, oh, good, it happened. Uh, it is still, it's a long shot, but the kind of thought process we have been able to put into our processes, into product, into the way we have been doing things and the way we should be doing things in future. I think there's a lot we are seeing. It's amazing when you lock 100 people in their homes and you don't let them have any distraction almost. And when jobs are at stake, when companies at stake, when lives are at stake, how the true meaning of necessity being the mother of invention comes out. So we are hopeful, but it's a tough one. It's a very, very tough spot that we have landed ourselves into. We'll try to get something out of it, but we are still in the figuring out mode.
Thank you, Amit. 100% certainly puts you in certain predicament. But yeah, I guess now's the time for the second question to all the panel. And, I think you'll have more time to elaborate on this. And basically, this calls for the tagline that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And in this intervention, we would love to hear, some war stories on the ground, right? How have you reacted? How have you been weathering the storm? Are we talking about, hiring freeze, marketing freeze? Have you had to renegotiate some contracts to keep afloat? We heard a little bit about from Bruno's partnership. I know Urban did also a partnership with a grocery delivery and those kind of things, because in the end you have a fixed amount of vans and a good amount of drivers, depending on that for living, right? So we talked about the different stakeholders that all of these businesses have. So I would like to hear from each one of you, like what have you been doing to keep kind of like the spirit of the company afloat, trying to react for this time being. I know for sure that not a single one of you is taking this as a break or as vacation, and probably working harder than you already been working before. So, any war stories, any, human personal stories of survival, or some of your drivers, or how you reacted to customers? Was it discounts? Was it, transparency, constant communications? We love to hear some stories on the ground from each one of you. So in the same order, I would like to have Joao from Urban tell us a little bit more about that.
First, amazing to hear all of you guys. Like as Amit says, like when we stopped, first what we saw is that okay, we have an opportunity to actually stop and see our mistakes and start to redefine processes. So was our first thinking. We didn't know that was going to be so long. No, we didn't know what we know now. But these of improving process and have a time to stop and think is important. And also with Ali, that he says a lot with the drivers. We also with the partners did the same. So we tried to have a minimum insured for them, for at least to be able to pay to the drivers, and the ones that are the drivers of their own vans as well. So first of all, this. So in our case, so we dropped like more or less like 80%, of our recurrent sales, and we knew that this cash is king, was the new rule, and was important to revise every part of our P&L, every line, everything that we needed to put effort on it. So like negotiating contracts, with every contract that we had, stop spending on something that was not valuable now. Also hiring freeze for sure. Marketing spending we stopped completely since the beginning, and also like optimizing this as much as we can our workforce. So we have many people like in customer service, many people in marketing that were no job in a sense. So we try to relocate a lot internally people, and the way of adapting as a team is something that I'm really proud, and we had some results. So the first weeks was basically costs, everything that we could do, and then we started looking as more for revenue, and seeing okay which opportunities there are out there. So the first one was e-commerce, as Bruno says, like e-commerce is a winning market now, and we try to partnership with them. So we partnered with kind of 4 companies in here, grocery delivery and also other goods. And this was important in the beginning to start allocating funds that are parked and they are stopped, and to give work to our drivers. But also the cost is much cheaper. No, like the revenue that we can get from each one of these is much different from the one that we have on personal transportation. So then we start looking to these essential industries, and there are many. There are many companies. We already were working, for example, with Amazon, with Danone. So we knew that some companies were not stopping their production and their operations. And in here, investors such as Angel Ventures a lot, and others, they helped us to connect with the companies, that exist in here, and to try to give this narrative of, okay, you're gonna need some transportation for your employees to make sure that they are not exposed to the virus. So we start working with a lot of companies. So everyone like marketing, customer service, many areas in our team was doing sales, and was a pretty pivot for many of them. And we start working with FMCGs, with pharma, with the hospitals as well. So we close like 20 clients. 25 clients in 2 to 3 weeks, and these months we hope to get back 80% of our baseline revenue. So it was really interesting to see the growth. We know that is a V-shaped curve, and maybe it's going to be again a drop after the quarantine in here. So we need to get back on the right track. But it was super interesting to see how we could react. And as you guys said as well, there is a lot of opportunities in here. So basically what we feel is that if there is so many people that are still working in here, since the quarantine is not mandatory in Mexico and it depends on each country, everyone needs a safer and focus on healthcare distribution. So it was really good. And also the communication, communicating with the drivers, with the people, with our team. So there is anxiety, there is this of doing home office and being productive and being able to create routines has been also a super challenge for us. So I think is one more challenge for us as a company. It's going to be much more for sure down the line, but we are super hopefully that the way that we could adapt, or the team could adapt to these circumstances, is going to be reshaping the company.
Thank you, Joao. It's nothing short of impressive also what you have built on the B2B side. And if you can retain some of those customers when things get to a new normal, it's certain that the opportunities make companies stronger. So before giving the word to Bruno, 2 quick announcements. First of all, we're going to take some questions towards the end of the panel. We have up to 75 minutes. And the other one is we're circulating some polls to all the people that are joining us. So please, if you can, also share your answers, it will be a good exercise for everyone in the panel to have, and we'll share those results as well through social media. So now we'd like to hear from Bruno and Miaila.
Yes, thank you, Fernando. It sounds like we have done similar things in terms of weathering the storm. The first thing for us at Miaila was during very challenging times like we're facing right now. Number one, I upgraded my Zoom subscription to premium because I knew we were going to do a lot of this. More than 100 people that we have at Miaila. Number two, I decided really early on that we needed to have the Eagle family unified and strong. So my the first comment that I received from in the ecosystem is, start cutting costs, firing people, which I understand, it's always when you expect an 80% drop and, companies like ours are not profitable yet. So I was very cautious about taking any immediate measures until I could really understand what was going on in the entire ecosystem. So the first thing that we did was having a town hall meeting with the entire company. I spent 3 days working with my co-founder, Andres Bloomer, putting together a presentation, explaining everything and being very, very transparent with the employees about what was COVID-19, how countries were affected in different regions, how our industry were affected, and what were the consequences if the impact of 50%, 60%, 70% drop over different timeframes will be consistent, and what will be our levers as leaders of the company that will pull. Nothing was off the table. Nothing was off the table. So I walked through an entire scenarios. If this happens, this happens. If this happens after 3 months, we're in serious trouble and we need to get together. And the last thing, the last measure that we'll implement will be firing people. Why? I decided that early on because during a pandemic, you cannot get another job in another place. So I thought as a leader of the company that it was very important to protect the family, and that it include the drivers. After the town hall meeting, my second town hall meeting was a town hall meeting with the Eagles. We exceeded the maximum allowed by Zoom. It was a very touching moment for me. I got really, really emotional because I could see I never saw the drivers with the families and the kids and in the spaces, and everybody was like very anxious to know what's going on with Mi Águila. And the first thing that I told the Eagles and the drivers and the families that we were going to be here for them, and that we will do anything in our power to protect their income, at least some of the income, so they could survive, that we were facing very challenging times. After that call ended, we ended with an applause by, I have that recording and I will keep it for the rest of my life. After that call ended, I literally closed the computer and said, what are we going to do with an 80% drop revenue and we have to pay the bills? Obviously, there is no way to raise more money in these circumstances. We obviously have runway for more than a year, so we're not concerned about that. But at that pace, obviously money doesn't last that much. So I started making a list of all the things we could do, from groceries, from essential workers, to transporting employees, taking food to people that were in need, working with our foundation. And like good thing happens to good people, and somebody out of the blue at 2 in the morning, I was just looking at the computer, sent me an email, said, Bruno, there is this great opportunity, you should look into this. I was like, opportunity? Now, execute. So I sent a really long email, and long story short, 5 days later, we launched our logistic business, delivering groceries to more than 5 cities. Now we're working with all the partners. I'm happy to say, and I hope this is the case for many of you in the coming weeks, that we need to 100% neutralize the 80% drop in our revenue. We're now actually stronger than we were before COVID-19. Obviously, we're living in uncertain times, and I'm not calling it a win. I'm calling it a surviving mode. And what we expect from this, that I have told employees and members of the company, is that this is a great lesson how, when we face challenging times, it's very important that we do the extra work to get together and get stronger on the other side. Everybody has worked really hard. Nobody has taken a weekend off for the last 6 weeks. Until like 2 days ago, I said, you know what, start taking some days off, because otherwise we're gonna burn to the ground. So we change the dynamic, and we expect that the remote working is going to be consistent to some degree for the rest of the year. Moving forward, because grocery deliveries at some point is going to decrease, we now see a business opportunity, and I encourage my fellow entrepreneurs from other parts of the country to look at this opportunity, is that companies in the world are going to require partners that really follow strict protocols until there is a vaccine in place. So for us, it's very important to give that peace of mind to our clients, that we're taking very strict protocols to make sure that people can get back to work. Now, we're at 50% of revenue, mainly because of that strategy of communicating to companies that we were taking very strict measures from protecting drivers, sanitizing vehicles, and making sure that people were taken care of. Additional to that, we did a partnership and working on a partnership with universities to do massive testing to all our drivers on a weekly basis, because our drivers are, it's not surprised that they are exposed because they're interacting with many people in different rides. So I think there are going to be plenty of opportunities for us. There's one of the partners of Sequoia Capital that said, I think 2 days ago, that entrepreneurs and startups have an unfair disadvantage in times like this, because we have the ability to quickly adapt, contrary to large companies that don't have the ability and the dynamism to be able to adapt to crises like this. So I think there are plenty of opportunities, obviously many challenges ahead, but happy that we can weather the storm.
Thank you, Bruno. Very, very interesting. And I, for one, would love to see that video. And now to finalize the round on Latin America, Alejandro, if you can share us, how are you guys weathering the storm?
Okay. Again, first thing, cutting people here in Argentina, it's prohibited. So that is not even a question. Of course, Argentina always takes things a little bit further. So apart from home office, cutting unnecessary expenses and pretty much delaying payments, there wasn't much that we could do on the cost side. Via Pool is a break-even operation. We haven't run out of external funding for a while now. But I guess if I can tell a little bit of a different story, being in mobility for 10 years and working with companies for 10 years has spread our services a little bit further from the city into different concepts of daily commute. We always knew that vans were an asset that could be put into different sort of services, not just to bring people to offices. And we always measured this as different verticals, different sub-products that you could sell with the same product, with the same service. So, of course, in the first 2 or 3 weeks, we were hit pretty bad, but we realized that our services were not dropping down that much as we expected. And probably after the third or the fourth week, our rides started to catch up, and we started to become kind of like a consultation company for big corporations that were operating in manufacturing plants that needed services, because manufacturing plants, especially for food, for pharmaceuticals, were still operating, and pretty much most of their employees needed some sort of transportation. So we put all of our attention into these new sites. Well, we were already operating there, but these new sites had much more demand than what they had in the past, and started to eventually increase our traction again. Of course, we were catching up from a drop, but since that moment, probably for the last 5 or 6 weeks, we have experiencing more and more demand. And then there was a second effect that probably worked in our favor, that most of high occupancy vehicles like 19-seaters work out of, especially in Argentina and Chile, work out of tourism. And tourism will be shut, who knows for how long, and these drivers have no other way of income whatsoever. So initially they started contacting us and saying, hey guys, how can we join your fleet in any way that you can? We need to be active. So that enabled us to become more creative in how to put some vans and some cars, in other ways, in the favor of this new need of transportation. And it's interesting because you don't have to use any subsidies, you don't have to advance commissions or anything. They just need to move the van and get some money out. So with a flexible supply and an interest in new demand to new different points, we are kind of like starting to catch up and developing kind of like a new service. Of course, with all the with all the measures in sanitations and to keep people with distance, probably these vans are not more than 50-60% occupation tops. But that has enabled us to continue to operate. And for a company that lives out of break even, believe me, that has been really good news. On the other side, I think it was less than a week ago, last Friday, the president announced that the companies that would like to go back to business, and now I'm talking more about offices, will have to provide with their own transportation. They cannot use public transportation at all. And especially big corporations, even if public transportation was an option, they won't consider it because they don't want the disease to spread around their companies. So probably from this Monday that just passed till today, we have experienced lots of consultations on how can they go back to their offices in different concepts of mobility. And again, if you, and what I feel, at least for the nearest future, is that companies will probably be the ones who will start paying for transportation before people, because those are the ones who will be pushing for some sort of connection again. So if you have the option to focus yourself more into corporations, the needs will happen first. And for us, that has been really interesting. Of course, we are trying to adjust to work from home. Like, we're still moving people and we still need drivers to be safe. So it's quite complicated because as you expose them, you know where this is going. But in terms of transportation, actually has worked in advance. So at least for the next 60 or 90 days, if the economy starts to go back to business, it will be probably come with a high need of demand in terms of private transportation in these new efficient concepts. It won't go back with public transportation. And so if you can leverage from that, I think that it could be actually a turning point to actually grow even more.
Thank you, Alejandro. You know, I think these are great examples of how good entrepreneurs weather the storm, and I'm pretty sure that it's very useful for both the panelists and the audience. So now back to you, Ali, and please tell us a little bit more. How is Boltlines, working through this time of crisis?
I mean, building on Alejandro's point, I think this is one of the key points that we drove with all of our stakeholders, both internally and with our investors, that we see a huge opportunity. We're seeing it with the conversations that are happening with new customers or customers that were in our pipeline, or with current customers that are on hibernation, that are planning to come back with almost, I would say, easily a 50% increase in number of employees, because in most cases, not all of the employees of a certain company, even if the company is providing transportation, not all of them choose to use it. Some people choose to use public transportation because they live on the metro line, or it's easier for them to come with public transportation. However, the trend that we're seeing very clearly right now is that most companies, first of all, in our case, the lockdown has been heavy, right? So the core business is actually down 97%. The reason our operations is only down 88% is that because we were able to add new business during this period, which is basically essential services. But the trend that we're seeing is that more and more customers will ask their employees not to use public transportation during this period. And I think this will spill over far more than the next 3 months. I think there's a behavioral change that is going to impact a significant amount of public transportation usage that will move up to, I think, by the way, by the end of this call, we need to call our category. We need to agree on a universal name for our category. But our category, I think, will grow globally. Now, I'm going to touch on a few points, especially, like on Bruno's point on the actions that they took. We tried to take the same action, and we actually spent a bit of effort with logistic companies. But different markets have different dynamics, and one of the dynamics that we have here is that we are in a highly regulated market. So we do have 50,000 vans operating in the market, right? That's, it's not something that we brought to the market. Istanbul had a market practice of corporates providing shuttle buses to their employees. So there is a 50,000 bus market operating, generating $1.2 billion in Istanbul alone. So it's a huge market. And when you have a huge market, it comes with a lot of regulation. And one regulation that we ran into was that these buses are regulated to only do employee shuttles, shuttle services, and schools. We cannot do anything else, right? So we cannot carry logistics. We cannot leverage these vehicles in other things. We can leverage them in on-demand. We can leverage them in outside the commute hours. We can do a lot of things with transportation, but not logistics. So logistics was cut off. And that was one of the things that, we looked into it, we tried it, it just didn't work. And we called, abort mission on the logistic part. But very, very shortly, let me tell you what we did. The first thing we did, we communicated immediately with our people. And we had a very detailed all hands meeting. We have an all hands meeting every Tuesday morning for 1 hour. All the function heads speak to the whole organization. And in that 1 hour meeting, it actually ran for 2.5 hours. And we basically explained to everyone the seriousness of this. This is unprecedented. No one has seen anything like this before. I don't think there has been anything where the whole world shuts down for a while. And we explained to them the magnitude and the repercussions and the ripple effect that we will be seeing. And personally, I believe it's going to go way beyond 2020. We're going to see ripple effects going all the way to 2021. And I explained to the organization that we need to be ready for this. And yes, we can survive 2020, but that's not the objective. That's the wrong objective for me to be focusing on. We need to be focusing all of our energy on surviving 2021. This is where I believe the trouble will be, because a lot of companies right now, like we had a call with Endeavor Malaysia, and there was this amazing slide. I wish I can show it, but it showed that in the dot-com bubble back in 2000, 2001, 2002, actually most of the problems, like most people remember it as the dot-com bubble of 2000, but the bankruptcies and the issues and all of the layoffs and the bankruptcies happened over 18 months. So it started in January 2000 and went all the way to April of 2002. And I think we're going to have something similar where the ripple effect will be way beyond what the timeline of the virus is. But we did that all hands with the team, and I'll explain a bit what we said there. But the most important thing we did was we brought together a crisis management team. So all of the managers of others at Bolt Lions were brought together. And we had very, very few objectives. One of them is to double our runway, basically, put it very simply. And one thing that is, known to do cutting of cost in a very proper way is to cut deep, cut once, and cut fast. And that's what we did, right? We cut deep, we cut once, and we cut fast. And one of the cuts was, as a startup, as a technology startup at core, if you look at our organization structure, half of the organization is in tech. People is our biggest cost, right? And to extend your runway, you have to do something there. And for us, we were very clear, and that's a personal approach that I have, is that there will be no layoffs. And we said our philosophy during this period will be the collective pain is much better than sacrificing the few. And it was painful. It was a very painful process, but it kind of brought us together better. In some places, it was challenging. It wasn't easy, especially that you're doing it with remote working, right? Maybe if you were to do salary cuts or any of that during, like, in an office setup where you have that human one-to-one face interaction with people, maybe it would have been easier, but this was painful. The second thing we did was we wanted to protect our drivers, right? And that comes with really fighting with customers to kind of like manage this crisis, because customers, if you think from the customer perspective, they're not getting any service from us, right? But they're still paying us anywhere between 20 to 50% of the monthly fee that normally they would pay. And we were able we managed to do that. We managed to convince our customers to still pay on average 30% of what they were paying before. And that was impressive. And that, I mean, it was very difficult. It was a big feast to do, but it helped drivers incredibly during this period. And we used part of these funds as well to buy them support packages, like food packages, basically, because seriously, some drivers were really on the edge. And I'm extremely proud of the fact that we were able to do that. And then we focused on, the usual things, right? Cash is king. We obviously hiring freeze, no marketing, no new investments, basically focusing on cash flow, making sure that cash is not leaving the company faster than it's entering it. And another thing we tried to do was to generate new business, right? And for new business, we tried a few things. Logistics was one thing that was blocked by regulation. Because of the medallion, we have the medallion, which is the plate, basically, the plate of the bus. We have a medallion system for buses, similar to that one in New York that was signed into law last year. So basically that regulated what these buses can do and cannot do. The second thing where we were successful in generating new business was essential services, some logistics companies, some food chain companies that we were able to provide that service to. And the third thing we did was to, on Amit's point, which is, on point, obviously, is to stop and think. And one thing that we stopped and thought about was how to productize our technology, because the technology that we've built is impressive. Obviously, every founder would say that about their technology, but it's way bigger and it's way more powerful and it's way more capable and has a lot more bells and whistles than what our operation requires. We have 300 buses that that technology can operate tens of thousands of buses. And that's one thing we started working on, and we successfully were able to sell our product as a service to another bus operator in Italy, right? And that is kind of opening up the SaaS side of our business, which it could be our AWS, right? We will continue to focus on our core business. Our core business will continue to be it has a huge path to even becoming $1 billion business on its own. But there's also that software that you've built to manage such operations is way more capable than what you would do for your own operation alone. And it's actually built by software engineers and data engineers and product people that are sitting next to each other in the office with another operations person. I mean, now they're not sitting next to each other, but they will hopefully sit one day next to each other. But that know-how transfer of what the operations people are struggling with, transferring it to the tech and productizing it, has been helpful for us. But I still think I'm a bit more pessimistic, let's say, regarding we still need to prepare for the worst. And I think I'm a bit affected by a book by Andy Grove called Only the Paranoid Survive. He was the ex-CEO of Intel, and I'm paranoid right now, so probably that will help the company survive in the long run. But I still feel like there are challenges ahead. We're seeing the end of the tunnel. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think we've hit the bottom in May. Most of our customers are coming back in June and July. We're seeing that come back, and we can clearly see that by August, September, we'll be 100% back to our previous peak, and we'll continue growing from there. But that comes with a ton of complexity. I'm not sure if everyone is facing the same complexity, and I think we can candidly talk about it. But one of the complexities, sorry, my son is shouting from upstairs. One of the complexities is, like, not everyone will come back in full. Especially for the B2B operators, not everyone will come back in full. There'll be different shifts, different schedules. In Turkey, we have a limitation of 50% capacity. I think that is one challenge that we can discuss in the second part, where how will the new normal look like?
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, we're gonna be to shorten that one because we're running a bit of time. But out of this block, we'll certainly love to hear from Amit. You know, how are you weathering the storm in India?
Thank you, Arvind. Ali, first, I have an answer for you, maybe a proposal for you. We can call the category shuttle and help promote ourselves also. But on a serious note, I think while the circumstances are very similar for all of us, maybe some difference in context, like regulatory wise, we're in the similar boat as Turkey. The buses cannot do logistics. There could be special permissions, but they're hard to come by. But I think the conclusions that we are driving may not be the same, and that's I was like very cued into what everyone was saying. I think our conclusions are very different. So one, there was some inbound interest we got from essential services, people wanting to keep their work warehouses or workshops on, or hospitals, and for their staff and stuff like that, even police for that matter. And there was this question that shall we do it? And all these years we have tried to kind of train the company on thinking long term, thinking solving things through product, and not just try to like one of the values that we have is velocity, and which we are very very particular about. We are not calling it speed because velocity is a vector, speed is a scalar. So we want direction also to be factored in there. And we don't want to take short-term decisions. And while a lot of opportunity lies in these short-term and which can eventually become big, somehow we reacted very differently. We said all these inbound opportunities which are coming for essential services, we will pass it on to the vendors, let them earn out of it, but we don't want to be a part of it. And there were complexities around it. How do you do it through product? How do you ensure that there's a certain degree of compliance is maintained, sanitization maintained, and we hadn't figured those things out by then. So we let it we just became the matchmaker there and let our vendor partners benefit from it. Second thing was more around, actually the first thing was like everyone, we had this pressure on cost. Suddenly the world had changed. And to which I had a very emotional, starting point to it, like, how can we let our people go? We became proud of our team. Over the years, we have tried to kind of filter out the best. And, this was the time we were really buzzing. We had our own share of ups and downs, but this was the time we were really buzzing. The team was really in. And how do we do that? And my initial emotional call was that, pretty similar to, we can't do this. And we definitely cannot do this on Zoom. But then, kind of, I thought more about it, and I said, what is the metric, like a product person, what is the metric we are trying to optimize? And the answer was survival. How do we extend the runway? How do we ensure that company will not die? And if the company dies, what happens? 100% of people will lose their jobs. So, let's find a way to kind of save the company at the cost of few. Now, there was the other point was also there. Can we all take pay cuts? But then there are challenges. People have kids. They have kids going to school. Someone has EMIs. Also, furlough is not very clearly articulated under Indian laws, and there is a consequence of that, which could be that it could be illegal. It's not very clear. So we couldn't go that path. So we had to kind of part ways with some of the very bright people we had over the period. Kind of recruited and trained also. And obviously, we did the usual stuff of cutting down on rents, AWS, whatever we could negotiate, we were doing that. And then we took a call that, once this is behind us, we are not going to do anything short term, but rather, and not worry about having revenue, for ourselves, for that month. In fact, if you're losing money on a transaction, your burn actually goes down if you are out of business. So it's not as bad as it seems. But the good thing is that we were coming close to break-even, and March could have been the first break-even month for us after a while. But we started reflecting more on that. What is it that we can do in these times, and what is it that we cannot? And we moved all the opportunities aside, which could be short-term. And we realized that it's a product, it's a tech which can still be as effective, as productive than as they were before. Maybe more so, because now there are no hustle around, the daily problems, fix this, fix that bug and all that. So we are using this time in a way that some company would have used before launch. In a pre-launch world, you just focus on the product, try to build it out, talk to the customers, talk to the vendors, talk to everyone, every stakeholder that you can, and figure out how can you do things differently. So we're building on a better ETA, which is a lot more accurate than it was. Google had raised their prices, so we were able to kind of recover that cost. We were able to kind of automate a lot of things that we were doing, reduce our contact ratio, because we are now able to kind of serve the more with lesser. We have lesser complaints now, and those complaints can be served by even lesser people in the customer care department, automating a lot of things there. And then, figuring more on the payment side, how do we enable better and flexible payments for the vendor partners? So a lot of those things are happening, and which we believe that the moment things come back, we will be much better placed to kind of execute and operate with much less number of people than we were earlier doing. And then we did something which was more towards the weakest link in our ecosystem, which is the drivers. The operators still have savings of over the years, but the drivers are really vulnerable. They live on month on month on a monthly salary that they get from the operators. So we tried to kind of raise capital for them. We did a crowdfunding campaign for them where anyone could contribute. We asked employees if they want to contribute part of their salary, a few days of their salaries, and we also ask the customers if they want to, because we also have a subscription business, but it is slightly different in the sense it is a pack of rides which the customers buy. And when this operation suddenly stopped, they still had residual rides in their subscription. So we asked them if they want to donate their rides, and in a way that all this while the drivers have been giving you rides, can you give your rides to the drivers? And we saw a very good response on all of these things, and we were able to kind of contribute, put together a decent sum and give it to our driver partners. But I don't think that is going to be enough. It was a gesture, more of a gesture than really moving the needle for them for a long term, because the way it's going, it can go much longer. Now we are trying to focus on, we're trying to divide it into 3 stages. There's a total snooze mode which we are in today. There are no operations. Then there would be a relaunch mode, and we need to figure out how to launch routes, which route to launch first, which slot to launch first, and under what metrics and what conditions will we launch. Then second thing is what the world would be like. We are also expecting some change in behavior. Our thesis is that people will move towards the adjacent, safer alternative. So a lot of people were using us, but also using their cars on certain days. They will definitely move to their cars, because cars are, let's not pretend cars are safer than buses. But a lot of people were using us and a metro or a city bus or something. They would more likely move towards us because we give personal space to them. So how do we tap into that demand is what we are trying to work on. It's harder because we don't have anything. We cannot go and talk to people and tap them on the way to the metro and all those things we cannot do. But we are doing a deep dive into consumer preferences, how they're changing. We're asking tricky, kind of not direct questions like, are you more productive with your work from home or less productive? Those kind of things which are giving us some sense, how the companies would react once the safety things are put in place. So a bit of that we are doing. But one thing we really don't have a handle on is social distancing. We can talk about sanitization, we can talk about masks, but how would social distancing play out? And here I think every country, it will be different. Like in China, they were able to really crush the virus, crush the curve, and then open the cities. So the people are feeling a lot safer when the cities are coming back to life. I don't think that would be the case in India. We are already more than 55 days into lockdown, and our numbers are only rising, and that is with limited testing, so we don't know. Most likely we'll have to open up while the cases are on the rise. And we are already 100x in number of cases from when we went into a lockdown. So it is definitely a lot unsafe, and we have kind of spent the last 2 months almost to scare people because initially they were taking it very casually. So how can they suddenly become fearless? I don't think so that is going to happen. but then which means that people would either want to stay back and not go to work and work from home. That is unlikely to scale in India because not every role allows for that. Plus, people need to protect their jobs. They cannot just sit at home and hope that they'll outlive this epidemic. That is not going to happen. So people have to go to work. But social distancing means someone has to, kind of foot the bill. If there is half the seats are going to be empty, then is the consumer going to pay more, or is the company going to, take the losses, or the government will foot the bill? Consumers are not going to pay more in India. Companies cannot foot that bill. They're not sitting on profits, and government doesn't have that kind of bank balances, if I call, to solve for it. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. And maybe what it would mean is we'll just ignore social distancing. We'll sit next to each other and hope for the best. I think that's probably what we are probably getting into. But yeah, this is the long and short of what we have been doing for the last 50 days.
Thank you very much, and very insightful. And guys, we're a little bit short on time, so for the final question, I would love to hear, like the shortest elevator pitch, and I guess we're all here on the same ground because we're doing a little bit of futurology. And I think a lot has been said from each and every one of you on how you guys are looking and embracing for the future. So for our final intervention and allowing for at least a couple of questions, I would like to hear, like kind of like 3 words or, the very brief elevator pitch on each one of you on how do you envision the future in a post-COVID for mobility or the shuttle or this branch of transportation. So we'll start off with Joao.
Yeah, so much was said already, but for you to have a sense on here the market, 80% of the commutes are have been doing with public transportation, no, and just a healthier can afford the car. So we have a big problem that people will need other safer options and to get back to work. So is in here that we see an opportunity to know that already many spoke. We believe that firstly we need to have a lot of rules, no, like as Bruno says, like all these protocols have in place are super important. Amit spoke a lot about the social distance. We still don't completely know if you're gonna, for example, set an inventory of the van for about 60 to 70%, for example, to keep people a bit with distancing. But we need to see economics on that and on the demand side. And then there is like all the technology parts. So we all here are technology companies, and we need to figure it out which product features we need to develop, and we are currently already developing. But we think that some opportunities that for sure people want to book their seats and in advance and know exactly which van in which place and which control environment there is. So first of all, you have a house that is your house that is a super safe environment, and you have your work when you get back, which is going to be a control environment. No, so all this higher exposure is super important for us to keep a van that exactly where you're going to put your feet on. No, then you have the flexibility. We think that is going to be super important. So people not going to come back like working every day. So we know home office is going to continue. So we need to adapt with this flexibility of times on hours is super important for us. And then regarding more the place in technology, contactless technologies is super important. Like no touch, no interaction at all. Like everything that we can do that can be contactless is important, and try that also to use the data so that people always can track if something happens during the van. No, if someone was infected and we know this information, we can track like all this network of people that can have been impacted in a way. So it's something that we are working on a lot regarding technology. Also, I think communication is key. So we are trying to understand a lot what our customers think. That's going to be the future as well. The clients as companies. So we are not trying to guess. We are trying to actually speak and continue speaking with the stakeholders to try to fit the best alternative for them. And I think this kind of also panels and the communication that we have with all the other companies, no, as us, is super important to share knowledge and to try to have a clear path towards the future. But we think that this is going to have like a lot of opportunities for us, more on the B2B side, as many said. The company's going to need to for sure take care of their employees, and these high exposure commutes. We can do something about it, and we can try to overcome these with technology and with good protocols.
Thank you, Joao. Now, super brief, Bruno.
Yep, I'll keep it brief. Mi Águila was created to transform communities in Latin America through smart and sustainable mobility for all. The pandemic has taught us how to be stronger together as a family. Our vision and mission has not changed. I think for us, it's just adapting to the changes and the ecosystem. And I'm truly excited what we can do at Mi Águila in 2020 and the years to come. As entrepreneurs, we have the responsibility to adapt to crisis like this, and I think the Eagles will emerge stronger than ever.
Thank you, Bruno. And now, Alejandro.
Yes, so trying to be brief, I think flexibility is something that is going to be on the table for sure. I think that we need to pay attention to big corporations. They tend to define policies that eventually apply to where they are. And I've realized that eventually these policies, whatever they implement in Argentina, goes to Brazil, goes to Mexico, and to other emerging markets, because they tend to behave in global ways. They're having global conference on how to apply these sanitation policies in terms of transportation. So I think that they might be the first ones to start paying for transportation, and according to their policies, we have to be really open. That's, I think, where the cash will happen. Legally speaking, I think that maybe, especially governments like Argentina that haven't been really flexible about legislation, will probably have to open up a little bit in order to new businesses to start happening. Tourism will be highly affected. For example, in Argentina, flights have been banned up to September. So already up to September, we don't even know what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. So I think that flexibility in terms of regulation will have to happen, because if not, a lot of people will be out of business, and there will be no time to actually to regulate this as fast as we can. So I guess, and I'm starting to see some opening or some looking into the other direction in certain ways, probably because people need to work, right? And transportation needs to happen. And finally, probably collaboration. I think that I've been talking with all of these guys. I'm happy to meet now Ali. I think it's really important for whoever knows our story. We've merged with other ride-hailing apps in the past. We are merged then, and I think that what's happening in daily commute in emerging markets has a lot of similarities. I tend to talk about cities and not countries. I think that cities, big cities, have a specific way of doing business that is very similar in different places. And when you talk about a country, you talk about many other cultural things that probably you don't get that related. So I think I can't see more than 90 days, but I think that at least as the economy starts to reopen, there's going to be opportunities, and probably it will come first, at least from medium to large corporations.
Thank you, Alejandro. Ali?
So I'll try not to repeat the same things. I think we're all thinking around the same lines. I think there's an opportunity. I think we're all gonna grow. And one thing I believe that combined, I think that the five of us can make a very nice billion-dollar company. So the opportunity is huge. And this always looks like, I mean, our industry is a hyper-local market, right? Like Alejandro said, every city has different dynamics, different legislation, different flavors that we need to take care of. But everything is, I believe, common. One temporary measure, I call it temporary because I don't think it's sustainable, is the 50% limitation on capacity that we have in Turkey. I don't think the metro or the public transportation can operate or break even at that level. The load factor is definitely above the 50% mark. But to sum it in short, I think we can put two spectrums. One is cost, more expensive, less expensive, and one is health and safety. So least safe, the safest. So on the upper quadrant, which is the safest and the most expensive, is your car, which always will be a very limited portion of the commute population. On the other opposite end, the cheapest and the least safe is public transportation. And we sit right in the middle, right? The five of us offer something that is really attractive. We offer, especially the ones that are offering A to B express lines in the city, such as Volt lines or like maybe Urban to a certain extent. That is a very attractive value proposition that gives us a lot of hope. And I think we're in the very early days of our industry, which we still need to call and come up with a name for.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Ari. And finally, Amit.
Yeah, so on similar lines, but like India was always short of capacity when it came to public transport. Like in the city of Delhi, we have about 5,000 buses, while the need is for 15,000 buses. And this is under normal times. Imagine when kind of people will want to move away from crowded public transport. How would where would they go? So we are trying to kind of figure out how can we cater to that public transport, a percentage of people who will move away from public transport whenever things start becoming slightly normal, when they have to start going back to work. And what does it mean? Does it mean a more affordable offering? Does it mean non-AC buses? Does it mean different routes? Does it mean across the day kind of service? Because today we typically work on morning and evening shifts. So those are the questions that we are talking about. There's a lot of hope that we have, but we'll all find out.
Thank you very much. So everyone, we have run over the allotted time for the panelists to speak, but we do have a few minutes left for Q&A that we will take on a first come, first serve basis. And before I pass it back to Hernan for this, I just wanted to thank you all for being here, remind you about the session tomorrow at the same time, where we will have members of the venture capital community speaking about mobility and their investments in the sector and the rationale for doing that. And we want to thank, obviously, our partner, IDB Lab, and Irene Arias, CEO of IDB Lab, for the welcome video and for helping us get this message through. Hernan, back to you for what we hope will be a very short Q&A session. Thank you.
No, thank you guys. And certainly, we do not want to overuse your time, and we are very appreciative. And this has been, I must say, a very insightful panel. I think that the lessons learned from fellow entrepreneurs on emerging markets are so different, from the ones that you will hear from more developed economies. We heard what, people in India or in Turkey in Revelation and everything looks like. So this has been fascinating. I will just cherry pick on a couple of questions. Some of them are very specific, and we'll make our best to actually make it, for some means to get them to you and hopefully reply to some of these questions. But a very common one that we're seeing is how are you managing social distance inside the vans or buses, right? This is a big issue in the industry, in the airline industry, and everyone is talking about this. So if any one of you can share, there's going to be like a hazmat suit of sorts for the consumer, or some points have been made about who's going to foot the bill for, more space to be had between, passengers in vans. So if you have any thoughts on that, that's one of the questions.
If you like, I can start because that was, that has been the discussion literally every day for the past couple of weeks with the team, with the lead team. We're doing multiple things. One of them is we are blocking certain seats in the bus, dressing them with a sign saying, this seat is blocked for social distancing. We have installed on all of our buses hand sanitizer that we are refilling regularly. and we have banned boarding the buses without a face mask. So you cannot board the bus as a passenger without a face mask. But there are certain, I think the most important part is, yes, all of these come with a lot of, it's an extra cost that, needs to be handled. And there are other requests that we have requests coming from our corporate clients that we haven't figured out a solution for yet. One of them was, for example, dressing the seats in disposable nylon. So basically, which I don't understand why, because my understanding is the virus enters from other places in the body, but I don't see why the nylon dressing would help. Another thing that we're still trying to figure out, and we looked even at technological solutions that we can integrate, which is taking the temperature of every passenger before boarding the bus. That's something that is not really possible, and the driver is not trained or certified to do so. So these are like open challenges that we have. But anything which is currently work in progress, right? Anything that we do will come with a cost, and that cost will have to be somehow passed on. In our cases, I understand in Amit's case, there needs to be some kind of support because the consumer will not take the price. But in our case, we will try our best to pass this cost down to our customers, because these are, the requirements that are, half of them are coming from the customers themselves.
Thank you, Ali. If nobody else wants to take a stab at this, I'll move on to the second and final question. And this has to do a little bit, and certainly we're going to discuss more about this from the VC perspective, but as a startup, how do you see alternative financing in order to preserve cash flow, right? This is going to be a tough time to raise like a new round. So would you see banks or traditional financing companies placing stricter protocols on who or what gets funded? Do you see an opportunistic chance in a certain months to go after venture capital? How, if things, start spinning out of control and beyond those, manageable times, will look for a continuation in business when it comes to financing?
Well, I can add a couple of things to the question. Well, first, again, as we've been break-even pretty much most of our operation, we tend to use any source of financial instruments that we find. Right now, it's delaying usually taxes. The government usually puts some lines of credit in place that we try to take hand on. We were also raising cash. We were about to raise to close a round a couple of weeks ago. Eventually, COVID hit us. Luckily for us, the investors have not pushed back. So hopefully we'll be able to close it if our numbers and our projections can meet our expectations. But I think that there's still investment available. Of course, you have to tell a story. I think that raising cash, it's all about a story, and now it's a new story, I guess. And if you can come up with a story that will suit the future, I think that the money will be in place. Meanwhile, of course, in our case, as Argentines, as the economy is quite unstable, we try to take everything that is on the table, from banks to subsidies from the country, from delaying taxes. There's usually plans in many ways. And of course, you can cut people so far. So if we manage to stay up to this point after 10 years, I think that we might have a chance to survive. All of us entrepreneurs, I think, will have the chance.
Okay. Joao?
I can add, yeah, if I can add something, I think like the VCs are gonna want to look through the fog, no? So like after all this can to see what has happened, which companies went through, which companies also like managed to do different entering in new business and pulled out like good solutions, no? So until this happened, and can have exceptions, no? We already spoke with some investors and they believe that are really truly opportunities in this. So I think that there are always exceptions, no? and the VC world is full of opportunities, and sometimes like times of these are times to take those. But if we can manage to don't need to raise money for a while, is what we're gonna do. No, all these runway talk that we spoke is super important. No, the much as we can to see through this is super important. And if there is any opportunity, take it. No, I think is everyone. If we can have more cash, is always welcome. Obviously, depending on the conditions, but can happen, and we will take it. Regarding like traditional models or investment models, I think there is a lot. I think also the banks are trying to innovate a lot, and even startups now of fintech innovating a lot of ways to financing. We see that sometimes we have fixed costs that are too heavy, and it's hard to rely on these and with the fees that currently exist. So always that's why the VC money is so appealing. But we think that there's going to be opportunities to manage cash flow, yes. But if we can manage to don't need it, and is what we're trying to do, and everyone in here is what we should do now. And everyone says like 12 months to 18 months at least to see this, as Ali says, no, 2021 is going to be tough, and we need to make sure that we have the enough cash to go through this alone, no, by ourselves.
Anand, I think you are best placed to answer this question. We would like to hear from you also.
Show me the money.
We'll certainly have more to talk about that tomorrow. I will agree with Joao. You have to first build on the story. You have to see, the pitfalls. But I, for one, and the reason why we set this panel is that we feel optimistic that there's going to be a shift in consumer behavior. We saw the blue ocean where you have public transport, something like the shuttle services, etc. of the world, and then cars. And I think people that can afford it will move more towards this. And it's very important for us to be transparent, to be efficient on the service, and to be, to provide everything that it's needed or in place to make companies and customers safe on using our transport. So I, for one, am the eternal optimistic, of course, from the partnership, but I think that if we are able to weather the storm and to make smart decisions and keep the family and the stakeholders close together, I think that we're in for a ride, no pun intended, but certainly we'll be able to come stronger out of this. So guys, I'm very, very happy to see all of you. Thank you on behalf from Angel Ventures, or webinar series partner IDB Labs and Iliad Partners. Having LATAM, MENA, and Southeast Asia on board is just a dream come true. So we're very, very excited and we'll definitely be sharing the lessons learned. I hope you can join us tomorrow for the take on VCs. We're going to have Mitsubishi from Japan. We're going to have an Toyota executive. We're going to have the head of Uber Transit, David Reich. That's going to be pretty interesting as well. And a couple of other VCs focusing on emerging markets, talk about, the financing trends and how they're seeing their portfolio. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody who was able to join. We'll be sharing some of these key insights as well through our media, etc. And well, hasta mañana, and good night, good day, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.